Okay, we've already talked about mitosis. Today we're going to talk about meiosis. Meiosis is cell division for reproduction in multicellular organisms. So this is the way basically that sex cells are created within multicellular organisms. You'll remember the purpose of mitosis is to create exact duplicate cells. Okay, so when a cell divides, it creates two duplicate cells that are exactly the same as the parent cell. So the daughter cells are the same as the parent. In meiosis, the goal is to create four completely different sex cells with half the amount of DNA in them. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Also, you remember mitosis was for growth. They used mitosis for repair, for replacement, and for reproduction in unicellular or single-celled organisms. Meiosis is used for reproduction in multicellular organisms. This is a process of creating a sex cell that has half of a set of DNA to pass down to offspring. So, a general overview. The human body cells have 46 chromosomes. Okay. Now, each parent actually contributes to the offspring or the child 23 chromosomes. This makes sense if you think about it. If a normal adult has 46 chromosomes, okay, then if a mother and a father are passing down genetic material to a child, each one of them needs to pass down half of their genetic material. They don't want to pass down all of it because if the mom passes down 46 chromosomes and the dad passes down 46 chromosomes, then you're going to have a kid with 92 chromosomes. And that's going to kind of mess that kid up. Actually, a child with 92 chromosomes couldn't even survive. It would be genetically incapable of survival. So the idea with meiosis is the mom produces sex cells which have 23 chromosomes in them. The dad produces sex cells which have 23 chromosomes in them. And then when they come together to make offspring, the offspring ends up having 46 chromosomes again. This takes place in sex cells. They're called gametes. And one cell will end up becoming four completely different sex cells in the end. By the way, guys, another word for sex cells is gametes. We also call them haploid cells. So here is a set of chromosomes. Okay, there are 46 chromosomes in the human body. They are different sizes and different shapes. Each chromosome is different. Each chromosome contains different DNA that controls different traits that the child will have. For instance, one chromosome might have hair color. Another one might have eye color on it. Okay. Now, but a pair of matching chromosomes are the same length. Okay. And they have this little dot in the center. This is called a centromere. This is where the chromosomes will end up linking up or connecting to each other. Okay. And these two chromosomes have the same genes on them, okay, or the same DNA on them that control traits. Each one of these little spots on the chromosome is called an allele. You're going to want to write that down. It's A-L-L-E-L-E, an allele. And that allele controls a particular trait. So for instance, right here with this dark band in, this might be the allele for hair color. And you would get this from your father, and you would get this one, which is the allele for hair color, from your mother, and the two of them together combined will determine what color hair you have. Maybe down here, this little one right here, maybe this is eye color. Your father gives you a gene for eye color or an allele. Your mother gives you an allele for eye color, and when you combine the two, it determines what eye color you'll have. We'll talk more later on about how they combine and how you figure out what eye color you're going to have later. But in general, this is a chromosome, and the one you get from your father, one you get from your mother, they link up at the centromere, and they determine what traits you're going to have. They are a matching set. Now, you're going to hear haploid cells and diploid cells. An organism produces gametes to maintain the number of chromosomes from one generation to the next. Human gametes, or sex cells, contain 23 chromosomes. You're going to get one of these chromosomes from your father, you're going to get one from your mother, and then they're going to add up to a total of 46 again. Now, these gametes, or sex cells, we also call them haploid cells. because they have half of the actual number of chromosomes that you need. Okay? A cell that has all the chromosomes that you need, the total number, 46, is called a diploid cell. So haploid cells have half, diploid cells have all the number that you need. So how does meiosis work? How does one cell end up dividing and creating 4 completely different sex cells? Well, here's how it works. Let's go to the next one. The first phase of meiosis is called interphase, and this is where the chromosomes basically replicate and you get 2 different sets. Guys, meiosis and mitosis are almost exactly the same for the first set of steps, and then meiosis changes in the second set of steps, but they're almost exactly the same. So in interphase, basically you build more cytoplasm, these centrioles show up, the fibers start growing, and you duplicate your DNA. Then in prophase, these duplicate chromosomes basically end up lining up, these duplicate chromosomes are in there, the nucleus starts to go away, the centrioles move to the sides of the cell, just like in mitosis, and these spindle fibers are growing. Now, in the prophase, also what happens, though, is when these basically chromosomes are kind of hanging out together and getting ready to, line up so they can split off, they end up doing something called crossing over. And what will happen is you'll have this set of chromosomes. They're exactly the same. Okay, they're duplicates. They've duplicated themselves in the prophase or the interphase. And then what will happen is they will basically cross over, and some of the DNA from the pink chromosome over here will go on to the blue, and some of the DNA from the blue will go on to the pink. So basically they end up crossing over their DNA and creating 2, again, identical chromosomes. This chromosome is the same as this one. They have all the same genes on them, but now some of those traits have swapped over. Then you have metaphase. These newly created chromosomes with swapped over traits end up lining up along the line in the middle of the cell. The centrioles and the fibers end up attaching to them. And then they end up pulling apart in anaphase. So they start, this set, which is of chromosomes, starts moving to this side of the cell, and this set starts moving to this side of the cell. Notice, though, that they're no longer exactly identical. Okay, they've got that crossing over going on. And then finally, in telophase, the nucleus forms back around the chromosomes and it starts to split off. But here, you still have 46 chromosomes here. You still have 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes. And here you have 23 pairs and 46 chromosomes. So you still have a full set at this point. The whole purpose of the first 4 steps of meiosis is for this crossing over to happen. So now you have 2 cells. They're no longer identical. They have this crossing over of DNA happening. But they still have 46 chromosomes total. Then you have prophase 2. During prophase 2, you get the centrioles coming back again, moving to the edges of the cells. And this nucleus starts to fade away. During metaphase 2, the chromosomes now line up, and the fibers from the centrioles start to grab a hold of them. Now, during anaphase, these fibers actually pull this chromosome apart. So now, instead of having 46 chromosomes in a cell, you're only going to have 23 because it's basically pulled them in half. This one has all the same alleles or genes as this one, but they're being pulled in half. And finally, in telophase, you have basically the nucleuses form around the DNA and they start to pinch off. Cytokinesis happens, and now you have 4 daughter cells. Each one has exactly half the DNA. Notice these are not crossed over anymore. They're not like X's anymore. There's not a full chromosome here. There's only half of the chromosomes. You have 23 in this one, 23 in this one, 23 in this one, and 23 in this one. And notice how some of them are now different colors, which means your DNA has ended up crossing over. So why is meiosis important? Meiosis is important is because it has 2 sets of divisions. Again, the first set is meant to cross over the DNA. This is going to give you genetic variation. It helps keep the species healthy because the DNA is now mixed up and genetically there's a lot of variation going on. That way, if you have any mutations in your DNA that cause diseases or issues, you're less likely to actually get those diseases because the genes have all crossed over and kind of mixed up. And it produces 4 daughter cells that are not identical. So at the end of meiosis, your cells are not identical at all. They're completely different. And they only have half the DNA in them. And that DNA has now all been mixed up. So you have genetic variation. So that's basically the importance of meiosis. So meiosis provides variation. Depending on how the chromosomes line up at the equator, your 4 gametes or haploid cells or sex cells have completely different combinations of chromosomes and of alleles on them. The genetic variation also happens during the crossing over during the first phases of meiosis. So basically, guys, in a nutshell, in mitosis, in a human, you have 46 chromosomes. During the process, all of those chromosomes duplicate and are identical. And when you get done, you have 2 identical cells with the exact same 46 chromosomes. During meiosis, the chromosomes again replicate, they duplicate. So during the first phases, you end up still with 46 chromosomes. But remember, during that time, they also have DNA that cross over that give you genetic variation. And then during the second phase of meiosis, you end up getting 4 haploid cells or daughter cells or sex cells or gametes. They're called all of those things. And each one only has 23 chromosomes to pass down to offspring. One of these sex cells will come from the mother, one of them will come from the father, and when they combine, the 23 and the 23 ends up coming back to 46. Again, here, these are all diploid cells. In the end, you have 2 cells. They are identical, exactly the same, and they have 46 chromosomes in humans each. At the end of meiosis, you have 4 haploid cells. They are completely different from each other, and they only have 23 chromosomes so that they can be passed down to create offspring. Guys, meiosis is a very difficult topic to wrap your head around. We will be reviewing it a lot in class, so if you're confused at all, don't worry about it. Take as many notes as you can, and again, we're going to review some more in class. You can also go to the Khan Academy website, www.khanacademy.com, and if you type in meiosis, he has a great video there as well. I almost showed it to you instead of this one, but it was like 30 minutes long, and I didn't want to like drown you in meiosis. So if you're confused still, you could go watch that video as well. That'll help.